Look how far we've come, all the things we've done. Did it all with love, beauty from the bottom up. All I want is you, you're my favorite view. But there's nothing new, girl, you made my heart beat.
And we are back.
We are back, bumble bitches.
Doing an interview with somebody today. Pretty excited about this. If you would like to tell them who you are and what you do, that would be super great.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. My name is Eva. I sing for the rock band Eva Under Fire, and I'm also a psychotherapist.
Psychotherapist.
Yeah. PhDs get really upset with us when we say psychologist because we are not PhDs.
Okay.
But I have a master's and a license, so I still get to do therapy.
So psychologists and psychiatrists, the difference is one can prescribe meds.
Yeah, so there's actually several of us, right? So there are LMSWs, which are the master's level social work people. We have licensed professional counselors. That's a different distinction. I am a master's level psychologist. There are PhD psychologists, and that all does talk therapy.
Okay.
And then you have psychiatrists, which are the ones that you were talking about that prescribe the meds.
Okay. So as a psychotherapist, how long of school is that? Like that, I'd imagine that that's not a quick wham
That's a
bam
master's
thing.
degree.
Yeah. So
yeah, that's a master's degree. So I just didn't want to go back to get like Dr. Liebert. That just doesn't, I don't need that. They couldn't pay me to go back.
No?
No, I loved my program, but I did it just for the licensure track so that I could, talk to people and do what I love for a living. And then the same year that I graduated, we got a record deal. So now I get to do both things that I love, which is really cool.
So how does that work for you when people come in and like, have you had somebody come in to do therapy and be like, oh my God, you're that chick from that band?
You know, it's funny. I've had that like maybe once or twice, so one of the things I introduced myself as Eva. My given name is different. My name is Amanda, but I go by Eva because I try to keep like a distinction between them, right? I don't want to do the weird ethics thing of like having listeners that are clients. But what's funny about that is because I started out that way thinking, okay, I'm going to do this by the book, right? I'm going to do all the real ethics, hardline stuff. And what I find is that I think because of my blue hair and people just find me that are also interested in the same music and like cool alt people just all hang in the same spaces. So it really hasn't mattered as much as I thought it would. I also am a person that goes out and slings t-shirts at the shows. So like we hawk our own t-shirts and people are like, oh, so you're Eva. And they assume that because of the name of the band. Right. Actually, that started as a song reference. So it's fun that people just, I feel like it's my little crown that listeners have said, oh, that's Eva, that's Eva. So eventually when they were like, that's your name, right? I would go, no. And then I'd have to stand there and explain for 20 minutes to every person that it's a different thing. So I thought the quick answer was just, yes, that's my name. So now I have two names. And I just love it. But yeah, there's been a lot of alt people that I get in my offices, and I think it's just a wonderful vibe that way.
Well, you answered the first one that I was going to ask because I wanted to know if you were a psychologist or a psychiatrist because I actually wanted, the next question was going to be about drugs and medications. I am curious of what your thoughts are on antidepressant medications.
Hey guys, little quick interruption. If you're enjoying the content, please leave a like. And also don't forget to comment. We enjoy interacting with you guys and hearing your opinions, and it helps the algorithm.
It's also free to do, and if you really want to help make sure the show continues to do, hit the subscribe button and share the content across your social medias. It costs you nothing, and it greatly helps the show.
We thought that they worked, and then now we're finding out that that's not how the brain operates, right? So I think you should, it's a cautionary tale. I think for many people who are long time struggling with low affect, right, that it can be very helpful for people who are especially dealing with like really intense symptoms like catatonic, can't get out of bed type stuff, right? It will get you to a baseline if you find the right med where you feel as though you can move. And that's great because talk therapy can't work at some level when a person is not able to function, right? So they can get you to functioning. But does it like take away the stuff that like contributed to that? No. This is why I'm often a very big proponent of meds when absolutely necessary. Make sure that you find a great psychiatrist who will listen to you so that you can get the right med. and be your own client advocate. And then also pair that with psychotherapy, because if you're not able to talk through what that is like for you, psychotropic meds have, lots of side effects, and people respond to them differently. So I think you got to find the right one.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. We have talked on the podcast quite a bit, saying that it is our personal belief, because we are not doctors. Disclaimer: we're not that. It is our personal belief. We're both getting over respiratory shit from us going to Vegas, so apologize for the coughing.
We love Vegas, and I'm so sorry for your respiratory shit. That sucks.
So do we. I'm still blowing bloody nose. It's been over a week and it's just rough. But
No.
tis the season for germs with kids.
Yeah.
So anyways, it is our belief that any type of antidepressants or meds that are supposed to help you get through your depression or anxiety is nothing more than a Band-Aid to get you through talk therapy. And we've talked about that a lot on the podcast. We want people to understand that going and getting any type of medicine to help make you baseline, it is a fucking Band-Aid. It's not meant to be on for the rest of your life. And people will get the med, they'll feel a little bit better, and then eventually they won't. And then they have to go get a different med. And then it's a game of side effects and trying to find the right thing. And you're putting Band-Aids over everything instead of actually getting to the root of what the problem is. And we've been pretty outspoken about our disdain for that. And then with reading the book, We Are the Placebo, we understand that with all of the med testing, 40% of the people that take the placebo see better effects. And 60% of the people who don't take the placebo have positive results from whatever meds they're taking. And those are the statistics. And if that's the case, 40% of the people taking the med is probably having the same effect as the placebo. So how effective really are they? And you just said that we're learning now that they're not so much. Can you touch on that?
Yeah, there's been new research that's come out that said that, we would think SSRIs bonded to certain receptors in the brain. And basically now what they're saying, and I don't have a great knowledge of all the details, but what they're saying is they're learning that the brain operates differently. And so now they're looking at how dopamine actually affects the brain, how serotonin actually affects the brain, and what these medications are doing or are not doing effectively, right? And so it doesn't work the way that we thought it did. And so to your point, Chris, and I think this is really important, I think I want to highlight that and intensify that even more so, is like our perspective is so much more powerful than people give it credit for. What we believe is what we get. So I think that speaks volumes to anyone at any point when you say, yes, biochemically, there is something happening. That's true. But also, what I'm telling you is I think biochemically, we can change what is happening by what we believe. It's that important. Perspective is that important. And that's why I'm such a proponent of talk therapy. And that's why I love music so much, is because when there's such an intense catharsis, when everybody that's coming together in a one space is just raging together, people get it and they see that, and all of a sudden I'm not so lonely and I'm not the only one. And then, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, so I get to do that on a one-on-one level when I'm with my clients, and I get to do that and room with 2,000 people when we're on tour, you know what I mean? So it's just really, really good.
How much do you think environment impacts that perspective?
I think environment is also key component. I think that I would say perspective is maybe more important than environment, because if you believe that you are empowered, then you can change your environment, right? But I do think it's necessary to do that. And I get what I'm asking people to do. It's really, really hard. But if you are unhappy, and if you are, then you have to look at why. You have to look at why, right? If someone's physically abusing that individual, that's a huge contributing factor. And it's not something that you can work with. It's not something that you can believe your way out of, but it is something that you can believe that you can leave.
Yep. Something that we say all the time on the podcast is that you can't heal in an environment that made you sick.
No.
Right. We also
so
say that perception is reality.
Yeah.
Been preaching that for 3 years now on this. That's actually that's the introduction to the book I just wrote. I believe in the power of the brain. I believe in neuroplasticity. I understand that we can create the environment that we want, like you just said, but ultimately we have an attitude that dictates our life, not a life that dictates our attitude. And when you change the way that you view the world around you, things are no longer problematic. They're all opportunities or whatever the case may be. But we've had that conversation quite a bit. That is definitely an ongoing thing.
Yeah.
Do you do reality therapy like choice theory?
I haven't worked specifically in choice theory, so tell me a little bit about that, and I can tell you if I've pulled
I
ideas from it.
I believe in the actual field it's called reality therapy. The practice of
applied.
reality therapy, yeah. But it's choice theory is written by Dr. William Glasser. It's basically the power of the brain. He refers to depression as depressive instead of depression, and it's something that we are able to basically snap ourselves out of, which I know is a very taboo statement. But again, it's the power of the mind, and if you believe that you're just a depressed, miserable thing, that's exactly what you'll be.
Yes.
So
Yeah. No, that's true. And I can tell you that I've pulled from that for sure. So I come from a background that is considered humanistic psychotherapy. And it's a really fancy way for just saying that I meet people where they are. And we talk the way that we're sitting here, the three of us talking. What is happening? Tell me what your experience is. Tell me how you see your experience. And then I can try to give some insight. I can ask you questions and make sure that I'm clarifying what's going on. But I help people troubleshoot and their own stuff, right? That's kind of the thing. It's like I'm a helper in that. And so we go on this journey together and we go on this deep dive together. And so sometimes those ideas are new to that individual. They've never had a person who would be on their side. They've never had a person who would listen to them. And if people are out there listening to this and they think I could use a person like that, get a therapist.
yeah.
Or get a friend who has their life together, who will ask you about, well, how did you get to do this or be that or have that thing? And they can talk to you about that. Well, the reason why I feel like my life could be this way is because I could stay at home and go to school till I was 24, and other people that are like, oh, that's the key point that I'm missing, right? So now we've realized I'm comparing myself to apples and oranges. I didn't get the same start that other person got. So when I look at what they have and how well they're doing, quote unquote, I don't have that. That's not my path. So I need to find my path. I can get that, but the path that I'm taking to get there looks different. So yeah, reality therapy about like, where are you as a human? What do you have that we can use so that you can get to where you want to be? Because it's not where you are, or you wouldn't have called me.
Got anything?
I had something else, but I lost it. So if it comes back, I'll say something.
Okay. Feel free to interrupt because the next question is just a bullshit question.
Okay.
Freud,
Yeah, jump in.
Freud, Jung, or Adler?
Young,
Yeah.
for sure.
Okay.
Young. Yeah.
I'm deep diving Jung now, only because of the shadow work stuff. I am a big Adlerian guy because again, that falls under choice theory and the perception, the way that you assign meaning to things. That's always spoke really hard to me. But I have been deep diving Jung for probably the last 2 months now. So
I would say that Adler, because of like choice theory and reality therapy, like I think there's a lot about focusing on like what you can do and choose to change where you are. And that feels very cognitive behavioral therapy to me, which I think is really, really useful. And I do pull a lot of tools from, but that's surface, right? Jung, when we're talking shadow work, we get deep dive things with Jung. And I think that maybe even just because a lot of the people that I talk to, I'm working with people that experience a lot of trauma. And I know that you guys have talked a lot about that on your podcast as well. So like, I feel like there is work to do in trauma and in Jung's type of stuff before we get to the Adlerian stuff, before we can feel empowered enough to do all of that and to actualize that.
we've talked to a lot of people, and normally people will pick one, excuse me, and they will deep dive that because it resonates with them and then not look into the other things. Because we all have our own cognitive bias to things. And if we have had trauma or we've done something and that thing has been the golden nugget that's changed our life. We want to show everybody, like, look, this helped me. It'll help you too. And we try to push that shit on people when in reality there's a whole lot that plays into that. And I can speak to Freud because of the childhood trauma and the mama issues. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But with Jung in the shadow work, the more I get into understanding that, because that's such a used term, it's almost as popular as narcissist.
Yeah.
So everybody wants to talk about shadow work, but not understand how truly ugly that can get.
I do a lot with the thing that I'm looking into and diving deeper into now is internal family systems. So IFS and kind of like inner child type stuff, which those concepts all kind of go hand in hand. But yeah, you're reaching into some really deep past experiences. Seems like a long time ago. How could that be relevant to me now? Type of experiences. But I think for people that understand more of like developmentally how neurology, how the brain works, developmental psychotherapy, which is like across all the time frames, right? We keep a lot of that stuff, and we maybe don't even understand how it shows up until we get to talk about it, and then we start. One of my favorite things is when we start doing like through lines. Oh, I see now where the pattern comes from.
Can you explain through lines?
Through lines, for me, I guess it's just something that I take and use. It's not really like a theory or anything that I got it from anywhere else, but like, when we were talking in conversation about, what's the through line? How did we get from there to here?
Okay.
And how is there perhaps still relevant to what we're doing now, so that I can just understand it better? Because once we have that understanding, that's like half the battle. Then we can, choose different.
Gotcha. I just never heard that phrase before. Did your thing come back?
It did come back.
I could see you staring, trying to hold on to it.
Do you remember what book we were reading where the author was talking about how people tell themselves stories?
John Deloney.
Was it John Deloney?
Change your past, own your future.
That book changed my life. And I was wondering, as somebody who works with people to get through their traumas and come to a state where they feel like they're in control of themselves and what's happening around them, what is one of the biggest excuses you hear from people as to what situation they're in or the choices that they've made, or just blaming everyone else around them?
Biggest excuses. Maybe it's I'm not worthy something.
Okay.
And that maybe it's the belief about self that, well, I don't hear anybody else. I don't listen. I don't, because I'm going to take that back. It's more like I listen to everybody else all the time, and I prioritize what other people want from me and of me because I have to, because I've always done that, because I was taught that, right? And so I think that maybe the biggest, I guess, excuse, and I wouldn't even say that it's conscious for them at that point, because they, again, felt like they had no choice, right? But they don't realize that, like, okay, but now you do. You're not a child anymore. Now you're an adult now. So now what? What do we do? Right? And they're like, well, I don't know what to do. And that seems uncomfortable. And then I feel guilty. And you guys maybe seen this on TikTok. I saw this other, I forget the doctor or so-and-so, what she was talking about. It's not guilt. You have allowed them make you responsible for their emotions. Give it back. In therapy, we call it handing the ball back, right? So I love that concept. And it's like, okay, well, you've taken on everybody else's stuff. Give it back, right? So I think that's probably the number one, is like, I didn't have a choice, right? And maybe at one time they didn't, but now we do.
That was one of the hardest things for me, to give back people what they've given me, what I inherited from other generations or taking on. And I felt like a bad guy doing that. Standing up for myself made me feel like I was a villain.
Yeah, setting your boundaries is fucking difficult.
Yeah, because everybody that is around you has perpetuated that, in the sense that they are what I call takers. So they expect it, and you can't reason with a taker. Once you change it up, then you become the bad guy, because, well, I've always been able to take from you. I've always been able to ask of you. Now you're changing it up, so it's your fault. And that's not true. It's like, no, I'm protective because now I've recognized you're a taker. So I can't give to you like I would give to someone who respects what I'm giving them.
That's a good way to put that.
Yeah. I feel the need to say this just in case anybody listening needs to hear this. One of the number one thing I heard from people who were takers in my life once I stopped giving was, "You've changed."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you're damn right.
Mm-hmm.
I've
Yeah,
changed.
we're supposed to.
You know? So that's
Yeah.
the other thing that I go through with people is own it. It's okay that you're a villain. That's it's okay that you're a villain in their eyes.
Yeah.
They can define you as that. Allow that to happen, because I think this is part of our empowerment, is that we step into a lot of different spaces whenever it's needed. This is one of those that is needed, right? Like if my niece was ever in danger, I would become a feral creature. Like I would, to protect her. That's all bets are off now, right? So this is no different in the sense that this person is coming to you kind of like in sheep's clothing, right? Perhaps they're not even aware that what they're doing is so damaging, but it is something that is damaging. And so once you recognize that, it's like you become whoever you need to be to put a stop to that. It's a survival thing.
You saying that people who don't even recognize what they're doing could be damaging. I was so deep into my own victim mindset. I can't believe all of this is happening to me. I can't believe people are doing things to me like this. My survival tactics were abusive. And coming to what's the word I'm looking for? Reconciliation is not it. The realization, or like coming to terms with the fact that I have abused people, even though I thought I was the one being abused. That was also a very hard thing for me to do. And I had to get over that hump of, that doesn't make me a bad person. That made me a wounded animal trying to bite anything coming at me because I thought they were a danger.
All right, guys, as you know, there was a TikTok scare. We lost the app for a whole 12 hours and we have no idea what the future of the app looks like. And with that, we are very concerned about the loss of our following. We have amassed almost 3 million followers across that platform with all 4 of our accounts. And we are trying to push people to other social media platforms so that in the event that anything happens on one app, we have multiple other backup plans. If you want to make sure that you're not missing any content, we highly recommend that you check out our Patreon.
On Patreon, we have multiple tiers to choose from. Starting at $10, you begin to receive exclusive content. At $15 a month, you get access to our private Discord server where we've amassed an absolutely amazing community of supportive people. And beyond that, we have other tiers to check out, along with my 2 private women's group, if that's something you may be interested in.
Guys, on our $15 and higher tier, you have access to live recordings. We record all of our content 3, 4, sometimes 5 times a week, live in front of our Patreon audience, where they are able to chat with us while we're recording. They get to see all the flirting, the outtakes, the hot topic conversations that never actually make it on the podcast. And it's really worth that aspect in itself. We have an After Dark where we sit down usually once a week and have a glass of bourbon, or in Peach's case, a glass of wine and a bowl of cheese. And we have a whole lot of fun conversations, karaoke in the Discord. We finish the lyrics. We literally just hang out and you guys get to hang out with us. There is a host of other perks, including Zoom calls that are coming for the ultimate tier, so that if you guys are having problems, you can talk to us. It also gives you the heads up on private meet and greets, because when we travel, we try to meet up with people on our Discord on a regular basis. There's a whole slew of other perks that come through Patreon. I highly recommend that you check it out.
The best way to support what we are doing is to share the content. The second best way is to check out our Patreon. Thank you guys for being here.
Yeah. Have you been able to identify and draw the line of like, where did I cross the line? Where did you personally cross your moral line with like what was considered abuse and what was you trying to protect self?
So one of the things that I pinpointed from my past relationships that I now view as abusive, I was very controlling. I would not allow the person I was with to go out and spend time with friends because I felt like that was taking away from me. And I was insecure. I had low self-worth. There was no confidence about me. And those were the things that I was clinging on to. Well, I'm the victim here. You should want to give me these kinds of things. And now I recognize that that was isolation.
Yeah. It's you're digging in so far because you don't know if you know from people that I've talked to, right? I don't know if they'll stay if I let go. I don't know if I, right? There's not a healthy way to have that relationship at that time. And so I'm sorry that your experience was so intense, but I'm so glad that you kind of know where you're at and where you're not. Because I also feel like people want to say, I am this or I am that.
Yeah.
It is both. It is both. It can be both. It can be different at different moments, right? You were both a hurt person hurting people, right? And so you've now done a lot of your own healing and your own work, and you say that part of me, that part of my behavior, what I was doing at that moment was abusive. But that does not mean that I am an abusive person, right? I want to be careful about how we take that on, right? That's because I think that if people believe I am this or I am that, you can spiral out on both sides, you know?
It's very black or white thinking.
So I'm going to change gears because we only have so much time. I actually think that we should probably just get scheduled more than an hour because this is going way better than I expected it to.
Oh, I'm here for whatever you guys want to do. I mean, like I said, as long as the banging stuff isn't bothering you guys.
I haven't heard it. Have you heard them banging on anything?
A little bit, but
yeah, I
nothing
haven't heard
overpowering.
Amazing. Okay, great. Yeah, so I'm chill. I don't have anything until way later. We can keep going.
Okay, awesome. So I want to touch on your music career and then I want to talk about the podcast. I actually knew who you were before you emailed us because you covered Separate Ways, which is one of my favorite songs.
Yep.
What is your most viewed video on YouTube?
That's probably one of two.
Yeah.
I think the other one is maybe an original that we did, Coming for Blood, because it features Matt from Ashes to New.
Okay.
And they had a huge come up over the last like year or two. So they hopped on the track and then they blew up, which I was like, thanks guys.
Yeah.
Good to be friends.
so with the music career though, and utilizing, so we're friends with Kingery. We're friends with another guy that calls he's Cuffing Season Music. He actually just he's got a song called Hypnotize that we kind of purchased the leasing rights to so that we can utilize it for the podcast. But we're trying to put people in connections with other people that are in the music thing. How pivotal do you think the internet is to the music career now? Because, I was born in 1980. I'm an older guy. And like, I'm not an old man yet. I'm an older guy. I'm getting to the old man part, but when, cassette tapes and CDs and like before the MP3 and the advent of YouTube and Spotify and Apple Music, everything was about record deals. And everyone that I know that's in the music industry right now is all independent and they're all doing their own fucking thing. And like, they're killing it because they're utilizing social media and YouTube in a way that has never been utilized before.
Yeah, I think it's so important. It's defining the career trajectory, truly, right? I think there's a lot of really awesome parts about it, and there's really a lot of terrible parts about it. So in the interest of not doing the black and white thinking thing, I'll tell you that I think it's about what you want to do. We are millennials, so I am not too far behind you, my guy.
Yeah.
But it is, so I grew up, I had access to things like Harmony House and CDs and all of that stuff. And the radio was paramount, right? So like, that was my dream. That was how I built my dream. And then when I got old enough to start recording my own stuff, the game changed. The internet dropped, streaming became a thing. And so it was like, I was right on the edge of like, oh, well, so now nobody knows how to do this anymore. The entire scope of what I dreamed about has changed. Right. So for me, I think caught in that space sucks because like all these new cats that are coming out, they're like recording their own music. These 20 somethings, they could like run circles around me and like any kind of recording, DAW. But it is cool to also see that they're creating a lot of their own stuff and they're able to put it out themselves and they're able to make the money from that, right? And you can use it as advertisement. I mean, advertising on socials is huge. And like if you create content that people are into, they'll find it, right? Like it'll happen. And what I do love though about my generation of people or our generation of people is like specifically in the rock community, that is such a loyalist space. And I love that for that. I don't think there's like too many super like gatekeepers anymore. Maybe people that listen to AC/DC, so gatekeeping AC/DC. But like, I think people are still so loyal. They want to share it. So they'll tell their friends, oh, check this band out. You know what I mean? Like that's still like a word of mouth thing. That is really, really important. I think our record deal for us was so important and pivotal because we are a live band. We love touring, and our goal was to get on the biggest stages possible. And that is what gives you access to do that. So we've been able to play, I mean, main stage events at like Sonic Temple and Aftershock and like some of the coolest spaces. We would have never had it unless we had like management and the suits as they call them. We couldn't have gotten there, you know. But so I think it depends on what you want to do.
Yeah. The reason I asked that question is because I believe that there is a correlation from like Headbangers Ball and the old MTV shows that were pivotal to metal and all of that. Like that was my come up. That's how I learned about Metallica and all the hardcore bands of the time. And then obviously my music went all over the place from there. But the music video, MTV went into reality TV shows and the music video died and YouTube came up. And I feel like there was a bridge between MTV and what YouTube is doing. And when you look at bands like Falling in Reverse, their music videos are over the top, like, and it's entertaining to watch. So even if you don't really like the music, because it fits the video, you're like, okay, this is fucking gangster. And then you get into the music because you've watched the video so many times. And I think that, that the video aspect of things is going to be the next phase of what sells records. And I that's my opinion, obviously, but all of the people that I listen to, it's because I'm finding their music videos on YouTube. And if their video is poorly done, I don't give a shit about the music. So
yeah, no, you're totally right. And so the other thing I'll say to that is like TikTok, right? So bands or musicians, artists that are, you know, musical, they are blowing up on social platforms because they're doing stuff with like, you know, just with their freaking mic stand in the corner, right? And that's basically the video though. But people want to see that. They want to see your mood. They want to see your tone. They want to see, you know, they want to see your face when you're doing this.
It's because they're trying to connect to you.
Yeah. Parasocial relationships are wild.
Yeah. I think it is, the visual is definitely needed for that connection, right? I think that's, you know, maybe why we chose to do Zoom instead of like calling each other, right? Like we could just, this is way better because you're like sitting and chatting with somebody. So I do think that that's a really important thing for sure, whether it's in the form of a music video or whether or not you're posting content that you want people to connect to your music, like show your face.
You are your brand. Now that when we change again, you got anything before I change again?
No.
Why do you like the To Be Better podcast? Because you emailed in and said that you were actually a fan of the show.
Yeah. Okay. So I found you guys on TikTok, right? And the fact that you're like husband, wife, family, but also alts and like talking about real stuff, that's my whole thing. That's, you know, I'm like, this is what I want to listen to what these guys have to say. Also fun, I guess, tidbit about the band. So my husband is the tall guy guitar player who wears flannel in our band.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it's fun that, you know, hearing relationship stuff and talking about like people you have, you know, people that write in about these things. And when you guys are talking about the maturity that you found in your relationship and how you guys have gotten, you know, to communicate better throughout both of what you guys have been through. I think that speaks to me just on the personal level, you know, because I have a business with my husband as well. And we've also been through some things and, but the, you know, mental health theme, obviously, me as a therapist, I'm also intrigued by what other people are talking about. I do not think that this should just be a conversation within a professional community.
That was my next
Like,
question.
Yep.
What? Like, what, you got to take that out there, like to the real world, like where people are hurting and need this information, right? So,
yeah, that was going to be my next question because we get a lot of hate that we're not licensed
We're not
in
professionals.
any way, shape, or form. And the idea that we can't read a book, find something valuable, and like I said, be like, hey, this works for me, try it. It's no different than being like, yo, I heard this song, it's amazing, listen to it. Like, we find the things that work and we want to share the shit, but we're told that we shouldn't speak on any of this because we're not licensed therapists and we're not counselors or doctors. We should just shut the fuck up and let the professionals do what the professionals do. And I'm not, I disagree with that. If I can help somebody, why wouldn't I help somebody?
I also think that's just the internet. Like, people are just trying to find stuff to hate on because they're either bored or they're keyboard warriors or whatever. I mean, I guess if, you know, if you guys were like sanctioned in some kind of legal capacity, I would go and sit with you in the courtroom and be like, no, I vouch for them.
Oh,
I have a
wow.
license. You know,
Hell
like,
yeah.
this is legit. So, because here's the thing, I want people to be able to share that stuff. I want people to be able to share that stuff. Even if I didn't agree with how you guys were like interpreting Adlerian theory, why these people were published, right? These doctors, they like wrote books and stuff. They want people to like read it,
Right.
right? So you should share. We should share it. Also, like, I just came up with this idea like 48 hours ago, so don't judge me because I haven't thought it through yet. But I want to talk about, like, I want to write a book that talks about how to take these conversations into people's homes again. Have conversations with your friends, with your students, with your colleagues, with your whoever it is, because not everybody has a therapist and not everybody can afford one. Like, that's some of a huge barrier to what I do. I would love for my music to take off so that I could just like pro bono everyone on my caseload. Like, if I could keep my lights on with music and then just like have a nonprofit, that would be that chef's kiss. Like, I want that, because it's not accessible to everyone. Care is not accessible to everyone. And people don't always trust a stranger to talk about with their deepest, darkest stuff. They want their friends and their family, but we need to have conversations with friends and family who are healthy, who are educated, who are reading these books and have good ideas to present for that are healthy, that you can take with you.
I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. K. He's the video game therapist on YouTube.
No.
He's fucking smart, and he's had a lot of interviews with a whole lot of people, and I've deep dived a lot of his content, but I saw something like 2 weeks ago that said that the part of our brain that is responsible for social interactions is atrophying because we are no longer in social settings. Everything is behind a screen, and it's easier to be behind a screen and get the things that we fuck with versus having to interact with somebody and maybe having an uncomfortable situation that we're going to lay awake thinking about. So now we just kind of isolate. And knowing that we are not in a position where people are socializing enough to have the hard conversations, I think that's where our podcast comes into play, because they can have a parasocial relationship with us and they can sit down and watch these things and go, hey, I vibe with that. I never thought about this. This didn't trigger me, or maybe it did trigger me and I want to know why. And then that leads into a conversation that we had with another therapist early on who said that what we are doing is working the way that it's working because it's problems that other people are going through that is not a fuck you to them. Like, we're not ripping them apart. We're ripping apart an email that has nothing to do with them, but that's their situation. And they can take it from a standpoint of they're not attacking me. It's not me that they're going after. It's whatever's happening in that email, but I can relate to this. And they said that that's why they think that we blew up as fast as we did with our content.
Another thing that person said was that we aren't restricted by, well, you can't say that to me. I'm paying you to be my therapist.
I forgot about that.
Right. We are, we're saying our opinions and it's unfiltered.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're assholes about it, but...
I don't think that that's, I guess, so two things. So you're right that there is a space for people to just be able to be people, to be humans, and to just have that conversation. And nobody has a specialty of knowledge of whatever else like that and can say in the room, I'm an expert, right? But like, I also find that some of my best therapy is done when I can have that unfiltered perspective with people, when I can sit there and talk to them in a real way that is, that makes me uncomfortable for you. And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't. Like, I would, and then I'm like, or, can I just be honest with you? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, I am so mad for you right now. I'm furious, like on your behalf. If I was there, they wouldn't like me. Don't tell them to come to couples therapy.
Right.
They would not, right? So
Yeah.
if it's like a person that, I feel like that's because they want to speak with another human. They care that I'm a professional because I'm billing their insurance company, but like also they want help. This is why I also want to put the caveat out there that I work in private practice. So I don't have like a lot of court mandated stuff. I don't have people who have to be in a specific program. So I want people to know, and listeners should know, that that's a different game. So if you were like forced into therapy at 15 and you didn't have any sense of privacy because your mom could see your records, or if you were part of a program that was mandated for whatever X, Y, or Z thing, and they have to talk to you about that thing, or you can't get reimbursed. That's a very different thing than saying, I want to go talk to someone, and finding someone in a private space who will serve your needs.
I've done a lot of court ordered stuff,
Yeah.
therapy, anger management, counseling. None of it really ever served me. I got more out of having real life conversations and reading than I'd ever gotten from
Oh yeah.
any of that shit.
Yeah. I have a question about that, Chris. Do you think it's because also maybe the things that people go through, they are feeling isolated from another person's perspective? Like if I got this from another human who I know doesn't know what I know, they didn't go through that, they didn't experience that. I feel like nobody else can tell me what I went through. Maybe it's important for other people to then cite their own sources, find their own sources, find their own information, because then you are fact checking for yourself whatever it is that you're getting from that book that you're reading, right?
Yeah.
It's because you've chosen it, so you can apply it to what you're feeling.
Yeah, I think a lot of the issues that I had with being forced to talk to people was some of it came down to language. Having somebody trying to psychoanalyze me and using terminology that at the time I didn't understand was very frustrating. And as a younger man, even as a teenage person, we fucking know everything. You're not telling us shit. My 6-year-old will be like, I know. I didn't even fucking say anything yet. What do you know? You don't know shit. Like, but they that's the mentality. So you have this fear of looking stupid as you get older because you're supposed to know everything. And I have no qualms stopping an entire conversation and being like, I need you to explain that or define what that means so that I can understand what we're talking about. 16 to 25-year-old me, I'm not going to look stupid in front of nobody. So I would just shut down and disassociate with what was happening. And there was no real lessons learned. Then when I realized that two people can go through the exact same lived experience and have two different takeaways, or the trauma that's experienced is felt differently, nobody will ever understand 100% what I went through. My trauma is fucking mine. Now, does that mean that your trauma is less valid because of what I feel? Absolutely not. You're hurting. I'm hurting. This is not a competition. Let's talk about it. And that changed everything for me because therapists have therapists. And I'm not oblivious to that now. When I was younger, I had that mindset of all these people think they're fucking better than me.
Yeah.
And my entire life has been hell up until this point. Like, I don't want to go in there and sit down and be judged. What are you going to tell me? Fucking get my life together? I know I need to get my life together. Like, so it's just but that's the difference between, like you said, a court ordered situation and somebody seeking out help from somebody that has no agenda other than to sit down and have a conversation with you.
I love that you shared that, and I love that. That's why. See, there was like 3 points that you just made that I felt like went back to everything else we were just talking about. Like, firstly, the perspective thing, right? As soon as you change your perspective, everything changed for you, because of how you pursued that knowledge. And then also, when we talked about how fear is so isolating, and that isolation is why nobody's wanting to have these conversations, or they want to fight you on who's qualified to have these conversations. Everyone is qualified to have a conversation. Every human being who's breathing and has a pulse is qualified to have a conversation. And maybe they're not qualified to be an expert, but that's not what they said to you, right? That's not what my position is in therapy as the therapist. I want to like be a person that you can let's discover together, right? I want to be on that journey. I said I'm qualified to help. That's what I said, right? I'm not qualified to tell you how to do it. And I don't know anything about what your experience is. That's why we're here. You have to tell me, right? And I want to know, like, because I don't like having conversations about the weather. That's why I do what I do,
Right.
right? That gets me nowhere. Like the small talk stuff, bye.
It should annoys
What?
me.
Well, yeah, we're humans. We want to share the human experience, and everyone's qualified to have a conversation about their human experience.
So then can we legally say that we're qualified to help people?
Yeah. I mean, you're not saying that you're a psychologist.
Yeah.
You're saying you're qualified to help people. You've
That's
had a lot
right.
of discussions,
Yeah.
right? Why wouldn't people say all the time on their resumes, I have X, Y, or Z job experience? You guys have experience talking to people about real stuff. And they wouldn't keep asking you guys if they didn't think it was helpful.
Right. That's true too.
Right? I mean, we got people out here saying, "Oh, we're a talent company." No, talent, competition. No, you're a reality television show. If you're not, the next Adele, it's season 8, right? Then
Yeah.
they're not gonna, right? They have an agenda for how they find talent, right? Or how they define talent. What is talent anyway? Anybody could say that they have some in one way or another, and that's important for people to feel like they have that. But they're not going to feel like they have that if they never talk to anyone about it, if they never find out from their parent or from their friend, hey, that was really cool what you
Yeah.
did or what you said or how you said that or the way that you phrased it, or like, I like that idea, right? All the things.
I wanted to add on to your conversation a little bit, talking about how you never said, I don't understand, or can you elaborate on that? That is so important to me to teach to the children. I congratulate them. I throw a little mini party. If you don't understand something, dope, let's learn about it.
Right.
And I for a short period of time, I was that person where I was scared to speak up and say, I don't understand that, because I didn't want to look stupid. And then I realized, if someone's like, do you understand that? And I'm like, yes. And they're like, go do it. I'm going to look even more stupid.
Yeah.
Because I can't apply what you just said to me and I lied to you.
No wonder why no one wants to have these conversations.
Right.
If everybody is thinking about that and they're just like, well, I don't understand and I don't want anyone else to know, right, that I don't get it, then yeah, I think maybe that's the crux of the issue, right? We have to do away with the fear of not knowing. We have to do, and that's what you're doing with your kids, and I love that, because they will dive right in and not feel ashamed that they don't understand. They won't be afraid to raise their hand in class, and whoever makes fun of them for that, they're going to be like, well, at least I know now.
Right.
Right? Like, I mean, that's huge. And I think so many people, our age, people everywhere, must have been raised with that idea then, that you are supposed to know. And that's why no one's having these conversations. And that's why there's so much hatred out here about, like, well, you can't say this or you don't know that. Well, I'm trying to ask and learn. And when you come at something from that perspective, then nothing is off limits. Culture is not off limits. Asking about pay grades not off limits. Talking to people about your emotions is not off limits. When I want to genuinely know and understand someone better, changes everything.
It also creates a connection between people.
Community.
Yeah, it does. It builds a community. And people respect somebody going, I don't know, but I'll find out, or I don't know, can you teach me? Because now there's an honesty there, and they understand that this person's not going to sugarcoat things or, hide simple things. Because if you lie about something small, you're going to lie about big shit. Like, that's just, it's a fact. So, yeah.
I think that goes back to the other thing that the third point, Chris, that you made before about how, the doctor said that our capacity to socialize is atrophying, right? Because we're all scared to have these conversations. There is no community. Therefore, we don't trust ourselves. We don't trust one another. No wonder there's a mental health crisis going on out here.
Right. I'm going to change gears again, unless you don't have anything to go.
I'm good.
How do you feel about people using the term narcissist on the internet?
I mean, I guess people can now identify characteristics that are problematic,
Okay.
And just because they're calling it narcissistic, and it doesn't mean that person meets the DSM criteria for that. Um, I half the time I look up DSM criteria for the diagnoses that I write in my charts. So
Yeah.
I'm like, I get that like a person that's not I'm just glad that it's being talked about, I guess. You know, people can like misname that, but I think that um it's not unlike someone calling someone like an extreme version of a jerk, right?
Right.
They recognize tendencies in somebody that makes that person manipulative and um, emotionally abusive in a way that is extraordinarily selfish. And I think that when they use that term, it's meant to sound more extreme, which I guess is all right if that's your experience with that person and you want to say, yeah, this is, you know, all the other terms that I have for this person doesn't cut it. um, so that's, I guess that's what I get. I don't expect people to like get it right
Yeah.
necessarily.
When I mentioned earlier about people talking about shadow work and not understanding what really that is, because it's just a popular term, narcissist has become one of those terms for me that drives me up the fucking wall. Because when you understand what narcissistic personality disorder is, just because you had a bad breakup or you had a bad relationship
Or you
doesn't
didn't get
mean
what you want.
right, or you couldn't control somebody doesn't mean that you were with a narcissist. It just means you had a bad situation. And instead of saying like we had a really tumultuous relationship, we had a really bad breakup, we just couldn't come to terms, whatever. People want to throw shade and label and name, but if you understand what that is, like that is a really fucking big deal if somebody's actually a narcissist. So to
Yeah.
label that to everyone that you've had a bad situation with, I view that as the Me Too movement. Because the Me
Yeah.
Too movement actually had like validity to it in the beginning. And then it just got adopted by so many things that it lost all credibility and fizzled the fuck out. So when somebody actually comes to somebody and was like, I think I'm being abused by a narcissist, oh girl, I get it, me too.
Yeah.
It's not the
Mm.
same thing. Like I think that in the long term, hopefully that bounces and we understand that there's a difference between selfish people and actual narcissists.
Yeah.
But I worry about the long-term ramifications for people who are actually being abused in those situations because it's being watered down.
They're not going to be believed as much. Or
Yeah. That's why I asked that question.
See, and I think that to Peach's point is like I feel like the reason why people are grappling with this talking about it thing is because they're already not being believed. And so I'm okay with people describing it however extreme they want to describe it. I do think that we have to be careful with when we describe something minimizing someone else's experience and or comparing at all, right? I think that that's a cautionary tale for sure that I would like to see more of on the internet and I guess maybe not even on the internet because I don't care what people say on the internet. Like in real life, make sure that you guys aren't minimizing what someone else might be going through, or maybe instead of saying that you get it, maybe clarify and make sure that that person um, isn't in an actively dangerous situation, right? Because when you say narcissist, um, that person could be being physically abused, right? Like that's a real issue. Um, and I also think that when we say all of these people are watering things down, I am still of the mind, and maybe this is because I talk with clients that I would have never thought went through what they went through, and yet they're telling me about this how terrifying situation that they've been through. Um, So I feel like I don't want to take that away from people. Like if it's a buzzword, then let it be a buzzword. But I guess like I also don't want to take that away from somebody that's saying, um, I've been through something that was really, really bad and it might not have been as extreme as someone else's extreme, but I think people go through more traumatizing situations than we really realize. I think that there's more trauma out here than we really realize. And I do think it's real trauma. I do think it's, when we say people are so scary on the internet and they're very isolated and people are, not building community like they used to, I think that's why we're in such a bad spot. And I think that's why there's a lot of rampant trauma out there because people aren't aware of what they're doing and saying and how damaging it is. And people aren't aware of how to take it and how to not take it and where to go for help and how to place these healthy boundaries. People don't know how to human out here.
Right.
I think that's why it's happening so crazy.
It definitely gives me new perspectives to think about with the way that I view that word. I'm currently reading Understanding the Borderline Mother. And because of I had a very, very abusive past, like every abuse you can imagine. And there's things that you understand as abuse, physical violence, right? That's abuse. We know that. But then there's things that people do out of manipulation or things that are said that can create a trauma in you that can change your behavioral patterns or the way that your brain correlates things and creates triggers and the need to people please or whatever the case may be that you never even viewed as a problem until somebody else mentions it being a problem. And then you start working back and go, oh, fuck. Like I've done all of this healing and I had no idea that that's why I do X, Y, Z. And now I need to break that down and understand that. And so, yeah, I think that the humaning aspect of things that you just mentioned matters and not downplaying people's trauma. I have to reevaluate the way that I view that because that narcissist shit just gets under my fucking skin, man. It is bad. But I also think that it's because everybody wants to label people and make them look like the victim. And I have a hard time with victim mentality and the pity me mindset. You know, that falls into the Jungian theory of control dramas. And that's a whole other discussion. But I pay attention to that shit. And I pay attention to people's personality types and the way that they behave. And then I adjust my personality accordingly because I am a boundary setter. And like, I'm not going to have people coming into my world and fucking up my chi because my world is good and peaceful and happy. And like, I've done the abuse. I don't want that shit anymore. But
yeah, great. No, I love that. And I maybe the other thing is that I have a habit of, and I don't know whether or not this is a good thing or a bad thing, but I evaluate differently what I see from humans on the internet and what I see from humans in my real life. And because I have an actively engaged real life, I think I would have differences with what I allow in the comment section versus what I would allow like in a conversation in my living room. So because I think that when people are that way, I think people are different on the internet than they might be in real life. And I think that this is the same thing like texting. We don't always get the context, right? Or the full story when people are texting. And I think that's kind of how I see people on the internet. I see this very small snapshot of what they've said and in response to what post. But I have no idea who that person is. And until I meet them and I have an interaction with them in real life, in my living room or out in the real world, I think then I start to pay attention a bit more about how they respond, what they're saying, whether or not they always make it about them, whether or not they're saying, oh, all these like crazy things have happened to me and they're like really spinning it and selling it, you know? And then I think that that's a bit much, you know, where I don't maybe even know this person well enough to have this conversation right now. And yet they're, you know, doing the trauma dumping thing and, or like really trying to have me view them a certain way, right? I'm clocking that, but I really don't try to clock that on the internet.
yeah, we tell people all the time that we only get a pinprick of their life. We get to look through a little keyhole of what they're showing us in an email or a conversation that's being had, and we have to, you know, pick it apart from what they've said. You got anything? All right, change conversation one more time, and then we'll wrap up because I think we have food on the front porch. I think that's what she was barking at. Did you order the food already? Oh, then she was just barking a bark. Okay. How do you feel about what's happening right now in your field of work and psychedelics?
I think that it's pretty interesting stuff. I am always careful about new things when it comes to trying, specifically for people who've been through a lot of trauma, right? So ketamine-assisted therapy is a new thing, new-ish, I guess. And then now I think they're starting to try to use, what is it, mushrooms, microdosing mushrooms?
Psilocybin. They're actually doing more than microdosing. The government just approved a study for through the VA for people who are post-traumatic stress diagnosed to do big doses of mushrooms and then paying for guided therapy while they're on the experience and then the reintegration process that happens after they come off. They tried to do this with MDMA. We thought MDMA was going to get passed last year, and it didn't. And they're working on other psychotropics to, because of the way that LSD and psilocybin adhere to the A2 serotonin receptor. And LSD is a dirty chemical. It'll stay in your brain for quite a while. Psilocybin has slightly different effects, ayahuasca, etc. But in people taking these drugs and doing this, you're able to get to the issue a whole lot faster because of the way that it creates new neural pathways in the brain. I've done a whole lot of research on this shit, and I've read a lot of the studies from the 60s and 70s all the way back into I think the 40s. And we've seen people been able to kick alcoholism with a single LSD experience. And like the founder of Alcohol Anonymous tried to go in front of Congress and get this to be a designated treatment for alcoholism because he took one trip and fucking quit drinking for the rest of his life. But I know that this is becoming a really big thing right now, and there's a lot of institutes that are starting to do psychedelic assisted therapy practices, and they're working on creating guides and a whole lot of thing. And I think that this is going to be a big boom with the talk therapy aspect of things. And I have a whole lot of concerns about it, but every time I get to talk to somebody about it that has any kind of knowledge, I want to, because I want to see other people's perspectives and maybe have my mind changed on things, because I am very for this. But I've also had bad experiences, and I understand that there's not really a such thing as a bad experience. It's medicine. And if it's getting the job done, that bad experience was a great experience if it fucking healed you. You just suffered for a couple hours. So
yeah, that's the other thing. I think that it's going to be, I would pay attention to what kind of criteria we're looking for in the therapists who are guiding these people, right? Because the whole goal of taking the drug is for people who are traumatized individuals, they want to get under the surface and talk, can't.
Right.
Literally can't. Like, don't know how. My fighters, my wall is like so thick that I cannot, not impenetrable, right? That's how these people have protected themselves. So in order to get underneath that and try to work through and process things, this medication, this is under the influence of ketamine, under the influence of psilocybin, that person becomes much more malleable.
Yep.
Their defenses are down chemically, right? So we've removed barriers. But the thing that we don't understand a lot more, I think research would be having to be done about, is like, how are we guiding this individual? What kind of criteria is not going to make sure that we re-traumatize this person, right? Because the way that that person is guided could be real bad as well. I worked with a client who did ketamine assisted treatment, and it was a train wreck nightmare. Like, went real bad, made things worse, and then we had to come out of that. But then the other thing I would want a little bit more information on is, what does the brain do in response to this drug, right? Are these situations and visuals and imagery created? Do we know how it's created? Because when we're guiding that individual and what they see is this the brain, like you said, bad trip, right? Could be a bad trip, could be a scary thing, but like, okay, if that serves a purpose, but I want to know more about the brain chemistry. Like, does it serve a purpose?
Yeah.
What is the takeaway, right?
With the guide thing, all of the research that I've done, and I've done a lot, in order to be properly guided, the guides are supposed to be 100% neutral. And they're supposed to be there to let the person that's going on their journey know that they're safe, and having a therapist there to write down the things that are being said so that it can be documented, and then the reintegration process that happens afterwards from the journaling or from the therapist aspect, and having the conversations while the person is sober, is where the healing is actually done. The experience itself is more about an experience, and like you said, it opens up doors that allows people to talk, because there are a whole lot of people out there who are told to suppress, and that's just how they've always bottled things up and never let it out. And when you have your mind open a little bit, you not only can you work through things differently, but like you said, your walls come down and it makes it a little easier to talk. I definitely think that as this becomes a thing, there needs to be training for this. And I think it needs to be very specific training, and it needs to be, I don't want to say a separate field of science, because I don't think that that's the case. I just don't think that that's going to be something that everybody can just jump into and do. And
No,
I
I
guess
think,
that's maybe my
like,
opinion.
like having a CAADC is like a separate distinction, right? It's like an additional X amount of credits or whatever on top of your program. And those people work specifically with substance abuse disorders, right? And they can work in SUD clinics, and different other things. So like I could see it becoming its own like distinction, right? It'll make us pay a few $1 million to take it, and
Yeah.
we'll be able to save
Well,
people.
and they will.
But
They will.
yeah. But I think it also is cool to maybe have, so another thing that they're doing in my profession now is that we are much more like teachers, where we have to take continuing education credits. So I could see that there might be like like a subset of CEUs that a person could take that would give you the updated information on the way that this is supposed to go, right? And so it could be done in that way, where there's like additional information that you have to test on every 2 years to make sure that you're keeping up with the new protocol on how to do something like that.
Yeah, that would be good. Do you have anything? All right. I would like to invite you back, because this has been a really good conversation. I feel like we got a lot
Wonderful.
accomplished. And I know the last time we were supposed to do this, I canceled like 10 minutes before we were supposed to go live, and I apologize for that.
You're good.
But I would like to sit down with you again, maybe when we have a little more time and we plan for more time, because today we didn't.
Sure.
And then I guess we can just correlate that through email. But is there anything that you would like to add for our listeners? Like a final thought?
I'm just so glad that we're here talking about it, and that your listeners are talking about it and they're interested in it and they want to share their experiences. I encourage everybody to keep talking about it. Talk about it with people that you know are like solid figures in your life. And I promise you, it'll feel less lonely, less dire.
And what are your socials? Where can they find you?
I'm usually doing all the band stuff. So band's name is Eva Under Fire. And you can look us up, and I've got a lot of songs that are mental health related, and you can message me on Instagram. I'm terrible at messaging, but TikTok comment section is a great spot.
Okay.
So we'll be out here.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. It's been fun.
Thank you so much, guys, for having me.
All right. Remember, guys, you are the
Bless you.
author of your own life,
So grab a pen.
and we will see you on the next one.
Bye, guys.